Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 4 of the People in Fundraising weekly nonprofit podcast, which is now entering its third full calendar year. And I have had the privilege of welcoming guests from across the country and around the world to talk about their career journeys in fundraising, whether it's frontline fundraising, prospect development, marketing, and today a guest about planned giving. I'm very excited to welcome Chris McGown to our program. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for letting me be here, Tim. I really appreciate it. I love being here. It's great to virtually meet you. I know we've been trying to get this together for a while now, so it's great we've actually been able to do it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you said, my name is Chris McGown. I'm with Peak9860, where we are a plan giving specialized firm helping nonprofits make plan giving a reality for their nonprofit, whether they want to do it themselves, they want us to do it with them, or they want us to do it for them. We want to make sure we do what they need, what's best to make plan giving a reality in each of those areas. So it's a great time to be in plan giving. It's a great time to be talking about it. And I'm very glad that you're here and allowing me to share about my passion about making plan giving a reality for nonprofits of all sizes. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Chris. Before we get into our questions, I'd love if you can tell our audience where they can find you, your company, anything about how they can get in touch with you if you're interested.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Our website is Peak9860, so it's PEAK, the number 9, the number 860.com, Peak9860.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Christopher McGown. There aren't that many McGowns out there, so it won't be that hard to find. If you spell McGown, no vowel in there between the W and the N, it won't be too hard to find me. I'm on there regularly. I'm on X. What's that? Blue something or other. I should know it. I'm on it. But anyway,
Blue Sky?
Yeah, Blue Sky. Thank you, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And so yeah, I play on most of the socials because it's just a way to keep connected. I work at home most of the time, and so the social media is a great tool for me personally as well as professionally.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for telling our audience where to find you. So as we always do with each guest, Chris, we spend a few minutes talking, or actually you sharing, how you entered the fundraising profession. So I'm fascinated to hear your story, please.
I think my story is the same as every other fundraiser out there. It's accidentally.
Yeah.
Is how you ended up in fundraising, right?
Yeah.
So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in education. And so I was going to go be a teacher. And I taught for a little while right after school and after my college, and I taught the rest of that year with the school I was at. But as you well know, that's a difficult time to graduate for teachers, right? Because it's the summertime.
Yeah.
I didn't have a job. I'm graduated, no job. Great. A friend of mine said, I'm starting an after-school program. I would love for you to come run it. And at the end of it, we'll see where you want to go from there. Wow. So I went up there. I started, I drove up. I was offloading the truck. And as I'm unloading my truck, he goes, oh, the good news is I've got the first month of your salary covered. Oh, okay. And so I did not know, but part of my job was going to be to fundraise to run that program that I was now administering as well. What I found is I actually liked that side of it a lot more than I liked the program side of it. And so I thought I was pretty good at it, and I was pretty good at it. So I got a job fundraising for a nonprofit. And while I was there, I met the gentleman at that time. The plan giving specialist would come in from out of town. He was the out of town hired gun. The local face would set up the meetings and go and tell the local story. And I was that person.
Okay.
I went to go with him, and I would tell the story, and we got to be good friends. Well, a couple of years later, he says, well, listen, I've taken another job. I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. The very first thing they want me to do is to build a team. Do you want to come be my first hire? I said, let me think about that. Yes. And so I went down there, and I spent a long time learning the ins and outs of plan giving and what does it mean, and all the intricacies that terrifies so many people about plan giving, right? The trusts and annuities and cruts and crats and grits and grats and all that kind of fun stuff, inside and out when you're doing it all the time, right? And I got to learn it and do it, and I've enjoyed it, and I've moved up the chain. I did consulting and training and teaching all through that, and it's where I've felt my love, because in plan giving, unlike any other form of fundraising, because I've done it all at one point or another, the conversations are more intimate with the donors.
Sure.
Because you're talking about what's going to happen. You're talking about, when you get into that, again, this is a small percentage of the time, just 2 or 3% of the time you're dealing with that. But like, they have a son who they love, but who loves fast women and slow horses and just can't be trusted with that lump sum of money, right? And how do we adjust for that? And how do we accomplish what they want to accomplish? So that intimacy is something that I always loved and kept up with. So even as I moved up in administration, I always kept a portfolio of donors. Nice. So that I could keep my hands in there, keep going, and keep talking to them, and keep that involvement and that connection to those donors. And I've never looked back.
Awesome. That's great. I'm just struck by the serendipitous moments that get you to this point. The friend that you're unloading your van saying, oh, by the way, and then the out of town development officer who says, hey, I'm moving. Do you want to come with me? Like, that's amazing.
It is a very crazy thing. Yeah. Because at that time I was still single. Right. So I didn't care. Like if I needed to live in a tent, I could do it. Right. It was something I knew I wanted to do. Yeah. I was not prepared for just how deep of a rabbit hole of tax code and information I was going to get into. Sure. But I don't regret any of it. I would do it all again, and I do every once in a while go back and take a refresher course, that fire hose of information. Right. But it is amazing that those coincidences that no one could have foreseen.
Right.
And so it's amazing. And so, like I said, by accident.
Yes. That's great. I have a question a little later about your company, Peak9860. But I want to get to this quote from your LinkedIn profile. I really am struck by it. It notes that you, quote, want to demystify planned giving, end quote. So for people in our audience who might not know, and you've talked a little bit about tax code and the various plan giving vehicles, what are some misconceptions that are common or examples of not as much in-depth awareness about planned giving, legacy giving, estate planning, please?
Yeah, so there's a few misconceptions, and I unknowingly just added to those misconceptions in our conversation leading up to this. 92% of the time, and that's not an exaggeration, that's a real number from a very long study from thousands of records, 92% of the time, plan giving is extraordinarily simple. I'm not exaggerating when I say, if you are a good major gifts fundraiser, good donor cultivation person, I can teach you plan giving in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Wow.
It's simple. It's the other 8% that throws all this mystery up. Yeah. And if you go to a conference, they're always in the minutia. What they don't tell you is it's so rare that happens, that you're involved in those conversations, that it isn't even worth it. Geeks like me love to talk about that, right? We absolutely enjoy talking about the 4-tier distribution of a charitable managed unit trust and how the donors can diverse their assets and secure the transition of their estate. All that. We love it, right? Yeah. But that's a very tiny sliver, right? So one of the biggest misconceptions is there's all this technical stuff. You have to be a wizard. You have to be an attorney. You have to know. You have to care about your donors, and you have to give them the opportunity. So that's the biggest misconception that we have. And the mystery that I promoted accidentally is that there's all this jargon and there's all this intimacy and it is there.
It's there, yeah.
Really small percentage of the time. And all you have to know is what to do when that happens, not the answers, right?
Yeah.
At fundraisers, we get asked questions from donors all the time that we don't have the answers to.
Sure.
And we have to say, that's a really good question. Let me get an answer for you, get back to you, right? And plan giving that's a really great question. We've got somebody who can help you with that. Let me connect us and we'll all sit down together and walk through this, right?
Yeah.
And so rather than worrying about the 8% that's complex, focus on the 92%.
Yeah.
And go and make it a reality for your donors and stop depriving them of the opportunity to leave a legacy because you didn't talk about it.
Sure.
Here's one of the scariest things. I talk to donors literally every single day who are millionaires, multimillionaires, who did not know they could leave their church or their favorite charity in their will because no one had said anything to them. They knew their alma mater could. They knew they could because let's be clear, universities are doing it, right?
Yeah.
and so they knew they could there, but that's just special for the big boys.
Sure.
And
okay.
So when we don't take the opportunity to tell them, they, of course they know they're attorneys, or of course they know they're millionaires. No, they don't.
Yeah.
Right? They have the same blinders on that everyone else does. So it's a huge problem we have when we don't share the opportunity and deprive them the ability to care to endow or to support an organization they love through their plans.
Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Chris. And I wonder, as you were talking, I was thinking do you have light bulb moments where you see in the donors or the prospects' eyes that it finally starts making sense? Because again, I think they probably think oh, this is really complicated and it's emotional and it's legal and I'm considering, what's going to happen to me when I die. And
yeah.
how do you think it kind of crystallizes?
Well, the first thing is the vast majority of the time, donors reach out because they want information because something happened in their life.
Yeah.
Right. So either divorce or a death. Those are the two largest, most common. And it's normally not them, or normally not even a spouse. It's somebody, I just went to John's funeral. I really need to think about what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So there's already a trigger. So you have to go into the conversation knowing, a level of empathy and sympathy about where they are in it. And then if you're going to do the complex side of plan giving, right? So you're actually going to help walk through there. We talk about the 4 Ps, and that helps donors understand. You can, at the very start of the conversation, you can say, look, and we're going to talk about who the people are in your life that you care about. We're going to talk about the property that you have that you need to talk about. We're going to talk about the plans that you already have and what we're going to do with them. And we're going to talk about the planners in your life and how we're going to engage them through this process.
Ooh, yeah.
And that's the structure we use to kind of move people through that. To answer your question, the light bulb goes off almost every single time when they realize that they can do far more than they thought they could when they're clever about how they do it, right? So they learn that, by using, say, their IRA, which is one of those 92% super easy, they can actually help their kids by giving them money out of their will, so out of their IRA, because they don't have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's these tools that, I can do more. I was only going to give $10,000, but now I can do $25,000, and they're ecstatic about it.
Sure.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's the light bulb goes on, not so much that they can, because normally by the time they reach out to us, they know they can. It's what they can do and what they can accomplish through it.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. This next question is sort of a broad landscape, because you've worked in plan giving for 30 years, and from your
a little more, yeah.
Yeah.
I stopped counting at 30. Let's say that.
I'm just curious, how have you seen plan giving specifically evolve in that time to be more of an integral and resource dedicated essential segment of the overall development landscape?
So in plan giving, I will tell donors, I will tell professional advisors, I will tell development directors, in plan giving, there's only 2 answers for any question a donor asks. And the answers are, well, it depends. And because the IRS said so, right? Those are the 2 answers to any question inside of plan giving. And the answer to this question is, well, it depends. Because what we've seen is a growing disparity We've seen significant investments in plan giving and plan giving efforts and resources and people and training and education for the larger nonprofits.
Okay.
Once we've got already the momentum. And we've seen a decrease in abilities and awareness and willingness in the smaller nonprofits because they're already overwhelmed and they don't need one more thing on their plate.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's been enormous investments because the larger nonprofits have the time and the bandwidth, not all of them, let's be clear, but they have the time and the bandwidth to be able to know. Right, the latest estimate that I saw just a couple weeks ago is $86 billion going to transfer over the next 20 years.
Holy cow.
Right? Not all that's going to have a planned gift in it, but a lot of it are.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The amount of growth. So 5 years ago, it was $50 million. Now it's $86 billion. So $36 billion in growth. Because let's be clear, they're not getting younger. Right. And the number of them is getting smaller. So that is growth of the value of the estates. Right. So these are more and more people that have more and more money, and how are they going to do with it? And as some of the ultra wealthy, like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, are more emphatic about there's only so much you need to leave your kids. Right. We're seeing more interest in that. One of the interesting things about plan giving is it ties in so much to overall giving in general. So the average donor during their lifetime will support 12 donors during the course of a year. I'm sorry, 12 charities in the course of the year, right? And that which 12 they are will vary. So you may get one this year and you may not get next year, a different 12, right? So it'll vary the 12. In their estate plans, it's normally only 4. So 4 donors. So there may have been 25 or 30 that they support during their lifetime. They're still, on average, going to pare it down to 4. Right? So we know almost exclusively that the higher eds are doing an amazing job talking about it. I mean, my mother, who is in a nursing home, doesn't know her name most of the days, is getting solicitations from my alma maters saying, hey, your son went to college. Here, wouldn't you love to support him, right?
Wow.
And if they would have done any well screening, they would know that's a joke, right? But they're not limited to just their alumni, right? It's this broad approach. And so one of those 12 is talking to your donors about plan giving.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Either directly or indirectly, that conversation's there. Well, you want to make sure you're in that mix too, because you don't know who the donors are going to choose.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to be in there.
Absolutely. Do you see, I mean, as you mentioned before, I'm thinking, okay, like for a lot of people, it's probably a church is one
church
of the
synagogue is number one. Yeah.
An alma mater.
Alma mater is less common. If they went to a private secondary school, that's far more common. Alma mater, especially men. Women are more likely to support an alma mater than men are. Which are really interesting, given that women tend to outlive men, and it's their will that controls. So it's beneficial, right? There are advantages there, but there's lots of psychology behind it, and you don't ever know, right? You just think so. Normally there is a social welfare organization in there near and dear to their heart. And if they're animal lovers, there's always an animal lover group in there, right? So there's the two school animal lovers and not animal haters, but just they're nice, but they're not my love, right?
Right.
But if they're animal lovers, then there's going to be some animal organization that's in there.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder how that will change, how that composition may change in time, given that, we're seeing a larger percentage of Americans, and, in Europe, same thing, not actively participating in churches or in civic organizations. So
I think you'll see it change significantly. The latest study by Gallup, not Gallup, was the other poll group. Anyway, showed a significant decrease in the last 10 years of people who identify as any kind of religion, much less right? And so you're going to see that dramatically increase. What I think is there's still going to be 4.
Yeah.
Just that 4 composition will change.
Yeah.
Gone are the, well, going are the days where they say, I give to my church because it's the right thing to do. Right? It's an expectation that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's leaving as this generation passes away. You're seeing more and more of, okay, not what have you done for me, but what is your impact, and what's this gift going to really do?
Sure.
Or just like we are in major gifts, right? What's the validation going to be? What's this going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it was the Pew Research studies.
Yes, thank you, Pew. Thank you.
Yeah.
My mind.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Totally fine. So I want to get back to this. So your career journey here, Chris, you mentioned at the beginning how you got into it. I'm curious also, what led you to launch Peak9860, and what does its name signify, please?
So Peak9860 came about. So as I mentioned, I've been doing consulting and training around plan giving for a very, very long time, even outside of it, or extracurricular, if you will. I was working full time, always with my supervisor's approval, right? But what I saw, and what the other people who joined me in Peak9860 saw is nonprofits would pay money for us to train them how to do plan giving. When we would train them how to do plan giving, and we would give them all the resources, the tools they needed, and then nothing would happen. And we're like, we're worth our wages, right? So we're not charging too much for it, but we felt bad because they weren't using it. Like they were throwing money away because a shiny object hit, and it was, should we go do plan giving? Or they had the very best intentions, and then something happened, right?
Sure.
Covey talks about the tyranny of the urgent, and so what that pressure is never going to be plan giving, ever, right? Yeah. For someone whose job it is not to do plan giving, and so we said there's got to be a way to round this, and so we kicked around ideas. There's 4 of us that formed Peak9860. All 4 of us had spent our careers in plan giving, all 4 of us in different parts of the country. And we said, we think we can do this for them. And so we started playing around the idea of going in and being their turnkey plan giving solution. So what we called ourselves changed. And so as the industry is moving towards the fractional terminology, it really aligned with what we were doing. And so we adopted that fractional terminology. So most of our clients, most will start with do it with you. We'll come alongside them, and we'll help them, and we'll monitor them, and we'll provide some accountability. And about 6 months into it, they'll realize, no, we're still not going to do it, and they'll bring us on to go do it with them. And that actually works out well because it's less expensive for them that way. So they save money by doing it that way. But they realize no matter what, how important it is. I would rather face Chris every Monday and tell him I didn't get that done than face my boss on Friday and say I didn't get that done, right? Because there's only so many hours in a day, and I'm already working 60 hours. I'm not going to work 70, right? And so what's got to give? What's got to give is the plan giving, because there's almost never a goal on plan giving. Plan giving is going to make your budget this year, right? And so what is this going to look like, and how we're going to do it? And so we said fractional is the way to do it. We can go in and do it for them, and go in and set up their policies, set up their procedures, look at their database, develop and implement a marketing plan, work with their own folks. How do we send plan giving? How do we incorporate plan giving messaging into what you're already doing, right? Yeah. And what does that look like? And how do we do that inside of their budget and all that kind of fun stuff? And then start talking to donors, meeting with donors, and sharing that, and giving tools for donors to raise hands and say, yeah, I want to know more, and then following up with them. So it started because we loved what we were doing. We would teach forever. It just wasn't being used, and none of us felt good about it. Right. And so it's like, so we ended up taking that part of it off the website. We're adding a back end now. I'm actually launching. Well, it will be done before this airs. The boot to try it again to see if we get some traction. People actually doing it. We had some accountability on the back end to hope it'll work, because we all love it and we want it to work no matter what.
Sure. Yeah. Are most of your clients domestic? Do you have clients Canada, internationally?
No, just domestic, just in the U.S. Some of what we do would translate almost uniformly across, but a lot of what we do, enough of what we do has country-specific laws.
Yeah.
And every state already has laws. And so we've already got to keep up with 50 sets of laws. And so we haven't ventured too far out of it. We've consulted with a couple out of Canada to help, how do we incorporate marketing side of it? Because that we can do, right? How do you do that? But not full-fledged work. So no. So a few projects here and there, but not anything significant. I volunteer with a group out of Africa, working with them. But that's me personally, not the organization.
I see. Okay. And Peak9860.
Yes.
What does it signify?
So when we were talking about, our what we want to do, I said, well, listen, I formed this company a really long time ago and I've done nothing with it. Why don't we just use that? What is it? It's called Peak9860. And I went, what the heck is Peak9860? And I said, well, we can talk about how, planned giving is often thought of as the ultimate gift. Right? It's the planned gift, the ultimate gift. Well, we've changed the vernacular. It's not an ultimate gift, it's the peak gift. Because when you climb up a mountain, you have to come back down. And so we can get to talk about the stewardship side of it as well, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's the peak of it. Peak 9860 is because in beautiful Idaho is the Sawtooth Mountains. And in the Sawtooth Mountains is McGown Peak. And it stands 9,860 feet tall. And McGown Peak. And so that is why it's Peak9860. But if you sit through one of our PowerPoints, we use the outline of the mountain to track our progress as we move up to that peak gift of a planned gift for a donor's journey.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's a cool origin story for the name. And I've, at my prior shops and my current shop and in talking with a few other guests in the planned giving landscape in this podcast series, no one else has articulated it as a peak gift. So I really like that.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the ultimate gift is ultimate seems final, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it isn't, right? So we know once a donor has made a planned gift, they have a far higher retention rate than your average donor. They have a far higher likelihood of increasing their gift throughout the rest of their life than your average donor. So it isn't a peak gift at all. It requires long-going cultivation because the vast majority of planned gifts are revocable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So being in the will when they're 55 is great, but it doesn't mean anything until you're in the will that's there when they pass away. So you mentioned earlier that it seems morbid, right? So that's one of those things that we try to fight. It isn't morbid. We're talking about life, not death. Yeah. But one of those fun trivia things that I don't ever talk to donors about, the average donor, the average person dies within 6 months of their most recent will.
Oh, wow. I never heard that.
If you think about it, that's because so many people revise their will, review their will while they're literally on their deathbed.
Yeah.
So it's a misleading number, but it's a fun thing to talk about to spur people, right? So it doesn't matter if you were there at 55. It only matters if you're in that last one. So that's that cultivation, that peak, that Sherpa guiding you back down the mountain as well as up.
I like that analogy. That's really good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've worked in fundraising for almost 25 years. My wife and I didn't even put a will together, and this is so embarrassing, until 2019. So I was almost 45. And we had 4 kids. So embarrassing and misguided that we didn't do it until that point. But I was just shocked by the other statistics about the number of Americans that don't have a will, even at these various
at various stages in their life. Yeah, well, 7 out of 10 Americans don't have a valid.
Yeah.
So I created my first will when I was 23 because I was going to go do planned giving. I couldn't do planned giving and talk to them if I didn't do it. Right. Sure. So I moved through the process. I created a will, and then I got married. I changed it. We changed our wills, and my wife and I had different wills.
Oh, okay.
Very different wills. Well, we couldn't even agree on who's going to watch our kids. Right. If I died first, they were going, they were going to her sister if she died second. If she died, it was going to my fraternal big brother, right? So we couldn't even agree on that. Right? But we had them, right? We had the wills, and then we had kids, and we changed the update, include the will, include the kids. Who's going to get, custody of the children, custody of the funds. Now my youngest is 19. He's an adult, right? So we had to update it again. So we take the custody out of it, but I'm not leaving my 19-year-old some lump sum money, right?
Sure.
So we still have to have plans to deal with what's going to happen in that time. And so the will's going to change, and it's changed throughout their lives and our lives, those triggers we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I like that. This is so insightful, Chris. This is fascinating.
Again, dorks like me love this stuff.
So great. We have about 5 minutes left. And I want to get to this last question here. So there is a great overview on your company website. Again, Peak9860. I was struck by the repeated use of the phrase, quote, and you mentioned this earlier with, I think, Stephen Covey.
Yeah, Stephen Covey, the tyranny of the urgent.
The tyranny of the urgent. So, my question here is hustle culture, its impact on nonprofit leaders, how, overall well-being, people getting burned out. It's a persistent topic. Have you experienced, this tyranny of the urgent or this hustle culture yourself? And how has any pivoting away from that, and whatever that looks like, positively impacted you?
So let me start with the culture first. Just to put it in perspective, the number one reason why nonprofits don't have plan giving programs isn't because they're afraid of the technical knowledge. It isn't because they don't want to. It is because they're afraid of it. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time. And there's only so many hours in a day. And so the urgent is never going to be plan giving. It's never going to be what can happen in 10 years. And so that drives, how do we augment that? How do we make it a reality for those nonprofits in a way that makes sense for them and their budget? For me, yes, certainly the tyranny of the urgent, right? So whether it was as a development director and having to make goals and having to make production, having a team of people, and now I have a production goal and I have 4 or 8 or 10 people that I'm managing, and I have to make sure they have the leads they need and they have the resources they need. And I'm the one taking the crap from management, and not them, and they don't even know what's happening, right? All that, and listening to them gripe about management, all that stuff that takes up your day. And then you come home and you're fixing dinner, and you've got the kids, and you've got soccer practice, which thankfully is the only sport they ever played. Well, lacrosse, that's a fun story for another time. Or scouting or whatever, all those other things, right? And I was emphatic that from the time I got home, and I tried my very best to leave the office at 5 until they went to bed, that was the family time. Yeah. Now, that may mean that I stayed up till 2 a.m. Yeah. Right. Get those emails answered because there's an expectation when it's going to be. So that tyranny was there. And then when you start your own business, right? Well, the only way you're going to eat is to go out and get business. And so everything you're not doing to earn business, well, wait, how am I going to make the mortgage payment? Right. So that tyranny is still there. And you just have to say, okay, it will work out. I have a plan. My worrying about it, my staying awake until midnight, answering emails or playing on social media or it's just a matter of me finding what the core was that's most important to me. Yeah. Right. And what does that look like? And you had mentioned before we signed on, you said, I don't look as old as I am. And part of that is youthful ignorance, right? I just don't know I'm supposed to look any different. The other part of it is, in the last few years, I've made some pretty significant shifts, right? I've lost a significant amount of weight. Awesome. I have started exercising. I'm eating better. I finally, after 30 plus years of my wife telling me, have addressed some ADD issues and what that looks like. And so all these shifts is sort of say that urgency of the hustle is still there. I've just found the coping mechanisms to get around that so that I can continue to live a life that makes sense for me while not driving myself crazy. And you'll hear all kinds, so it's nothing new, right? but the power of no has truly changed my life.
Oh,
right?
awesome.
I just be able to say, I understand that would be a great opportunity. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's financially. I would love to go to that conference. I just don't have the money in my budget right now. Other times it is, that would be a great, but I can't take the time away from the family. I will have just gotten back from a trip or whatever. So I've reprioritized things. Right. My youngest is in college now. So essentially empty nesters. My wife and I are rediscovering what it's like to have free time.
Yeah.
And she's found all kinds of ways to fill it. I hate painting, by the way, despise painting. And so that hustle is there. We just found ways to deal with it and comprehend it. And I'm trying to bring that into the business life. And it translates so well to what we do in our professional life. And so kind of bringing that along and saying, this is how I'm doing it. You might want to look at it.
That is so healthy. I'm so glad that you shared, those experiences here.
Well, I wish I wouldn't have had them, to be honest with you. But
well, sure, yeah. Same with me. Same with everyone. We can all relate to the specifics may look different between you and me and other people, but you don't learn without going through challenges. As pithy as that stupidly sounds.
But you're actually, and those are the lessons you learn best, and you learn deep.
Yeah. I've got a tidbit for you. You mentioned empty nest, and it reminded me, I read an article this past fall. I think it was Gretchen Rubin, maybe, in the New York Times. And she and her husband have, I think, 1 or 2 college-age daughters. And she was really wrestling with that term, empty nest, because it felt like a blank canvas, but not in a good way. And so she in this article, she really goes through all of the other euphemisms she was kind of batting around, and she and her husband ended up with, we're in the open door stage of our lives. We're not in the empty nest. An open door is literally, our doors open when our kids want to come back home. Our doors open when friends want to come over. Our doors open to career and personal growth. And so I just share that,
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and you're right. It can have a negative connotation, but it is felt that way sometimes. But I love the open door. That is a very powerful way to look at it.
Yeah. So my little fact of the day.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, this has just been delightful to talk with you. I've learned a good deal. It's been fun. It's been uplifting and insightful. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here. I hope it's been helpful to your listeners. And like I said, I'm happy to engage. If you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see a link. Grab some time on my calendar, talk to you about what's going on in your life and in your organization, right? So our goal is to make sure everybody knows plan giving is possible.
I love it. That's great. Yes, please check out Peak9860, the website for Chris's company. And thank you again for your time, Chris. This interview will air in late March or early April of 2025. Chris, feel free to repost it when it goes live on LinkedIn. We're connected there. And for our audience, you can find Chris's conversation on LinkedIn, which will have a link to the YouTube portion of this audio-visual section, as well as Spotify and Podbean, which is the audio only. And then thanks to Luis Diaz of the Donor Participation Project, who is sponsoring my new podcast website. You can find it at peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. Thank you all for supporting this project. And Chris, thank you again, and hope our paths cross in the real world someday.
That'd be great. In real life, it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.